difficulties and challenges escalate, that happened, which is my fault. I accept and own full responsibility. I put them there. It doesn't count when your apology is from a place of victimhood. Those apologies are worthless. In fact, they do you more harm than good. It's more destructive for me to pretend it didn't happen, to gaslight, to try to deflect. That causes me more pain than the pain of just being like, shit, I did it. I don't want to be a villain. I don't want to blame. I don't want to harm. I don't want to be a victim either.
If we can just tell the truth and come clean and admit when we're wrong, it seems to work out. There's freedom in it.
When we own our complete and catastrophic failures, I think it's a superpower.
That's super alpha.
Where are you going to start?
You got to have some capable men around you who can guide you. You need to be asking for that. You need to go intentionally seeking it.
Continually do the next right thing.
If you're a man that controls his own destiny, a man that is always in the pursuit of being better, you are in the right place. You are responsible. You are strong. You are a leader. You are a force for good. Gentlemen, you are the Alpha, and this is the Alpha Quorum.
Welcome back to the Alpha Quorum Show. Brad Singletary here. I'm so glad to be back with my buddy Taco Mike. Tonight we wanted to talk about responsibility. So an alpha is responsible. He does good. He admits his wrongs and makes amends, and he accepts the things that he can't change and changes the unacceptable things that he can. So let's get started here tonight, man. You were talking about tools. And Mike, I got to tell you that one of your best tools is your language. So you're very articulate. You've got this sophisticated way of communication, and it's very good. It's simple. But in terms of your self-growth and your like personal development, the healing and the things that you've done in recovery and all that you've worked at in your life, you have great language. And when I think about the language of responsibility, it takes being able to say certain kinds of things. So I wish I could remember off the top of my head some of the things that you've said, but I remember in one of I think it was the solo podcast that you did about confidence, and you just said, I'm the kind of person who can figure this out. I'm the kind of person who can take this. I'm the kind of person who can learn from my situation. You've used things like, hey, I'm just an idiot. I'm just a dirtbag. I'm just whatever. And the way you talk about yourself, the way you talk about the things that you need to do, it's very impressive. Like the way you describe your faults, your past mistakes and failures, the way you talk about what you're still trying to do. So I think one of the tools, going back to tools, one of the tools that men need is how to talk about their own responsibilities, how to talk about their failures, how to talk about what it is they need to be accountable for. How have you gained some of that magic language? Where did you get it from?
You're too nice. I need to come back here more just so I can have you say nice things about me, which I do not deserve but appreciate. The thing I think everybody needs to figure out a language that works for them. Here's an example. Most people know that I am Mormon, but I'm not a very good one, because most of what happens in organized religions, and especially in Mormonism, it doesn't work for me, and it doesn't resonate with me. And I remember the moment that I sort of accepted that. There was something happening, and someone's reading. We all have a Bible in our house. Most of us have a King James Version Bible in our house. That doesn't do crap for me. I could sit down and read that, and it does not chime to me. And a lot of us also have a prayer language that we're supposed to use, like our religion or our denomination imprints on us sort of a format or a structure.
Here's the template for praying.
Bingo. And some of us went out on missions for churches that had little flip cards that told people you're supposed to do it this way. This is what God likes. Any other way, God doesn't like it. And I remember sitting in a Mormon meeting one time, and someone's reading from the King James Bible, and I got nothing. It meant nothing to me. And it just, something in my brain just went click, then don't read that. Get a different version. What's to stop you? Why don't you just go out and find some other version that's got a better, easier to understand format? And then I remember one time defending against this was earlier, but I remember one time somebody I think I was on my mission, and somebody said, "Oh no, I don't know that I want to use this official Mormon Bible, the King James, because I use this other one." And then we had to talk them out of that and tell them, "No, this is the only one that's approved, because anything else in there could be a shadow off of the truth or whatever." Who cares? I don't care. Please write me a letter. Please disabuse me of this, but I don't care. What I do care about is the intimacy, the relationship, the feeling, the vibe that I have with Jesus. I care about that. I don't give a rat's ass about whether you use this Bible or that Bible. I don't care. And I just remember in my brain just this moment that, like, I'm over it. I'm over reading a Bible I don't understand. I'm over praying with words that don't make any sense to me, that don't reflect who I am as a person or how I talk. It felt like I was having a third-party interaction with this deity that I did want to have an interaction and a relationship with. And I was over it, and I was done, and I never looked back. And it has allowed me to grow and to evolve and deepen sort of that whole relationship part of who I am as a person. It's a weird way to answer your question. Here's the punchline, I think. I think that when people don't feel comfortable in their own skin, they hunt around for language. They hunt around for words. I think it's about being confident and comfortable with who you are as a person. And if someone has hang-ups, if somebody has baggage, if somebody has you're inauthentic, which is kind of one of those Oprah ways of saying, like, you're really not who you are. Like, you're sort of your life you may be living this life that's not really your life. You're just sort of stuck in this situation, in this world, that it's not who you are, and you're just trying to fake it till you make it.
Just please everyone else.
Kind of. And if one of these days, if you get some balls and you just sort of like realize what does and what doesn't work and figure out how to make it your own, then you could like flower. Like it could, again, I drop back that's Oprah talk. Stop me. Please write me an email and tell me to stop doing this. I'm trying not to do that. If you figured that shit out, there we go. That's how you say it. Then I believe anyone and everyone can just sort of like freaking come on fire. And maybe your gift is language. Maybe that's mine. But maybe your gift is something else. And if you can sort of like light up with who you are as a person, people are going to resonate with that. People are going to appreciate that. They're going to value that. And then you are adding alpha value into your community. And so you're adding that into your family, whatever. Maybe it's, it's music. Maybe it's, I don't know. I'm just getting weird here. Maybe it's sports. Maybe it's whatever. Who knows? But I just think when you really become who the person, your little DNA cells, who you are in there, and you stop with all the nonsense pretending, then you just you're just lit up. And so maybe that's sorry for that, but maybe that's how I explain it.
I love it. And just the example of talking about prayer and language and stuff like that. I've heard Mike pray before, and here's how he starts it. Well, God, it's us again. And it's the best thing I've ever heard in my life. It's some of you have been around Mike in ways that you've heard him pray before. But anyway, I love what you're saying. And I think this is a message that I'm receiving in multiple areas of my life right now. But language, yes, that is a gift that you have. And you're saying if a man really comes to terms with who he is and he's living authentically as himself, he's keeping it real, then he will know the things that he needs to say. It's interesting. It's an interesting way to look at it. Such a deep way to talk about that. I'm curious about the guy who would say the words. He needs to take responsibility for something. But he's never uttered the words, my bad. He's never apologized to someone before because of pride or ego or because of whatever the reason. he just can't say the words. He's never said it before. And so to say it out loud, to kind of practice it out loud, that's something that I do with people sometimes. Repeat after me, say these things, and it's kind of locked in now as a tool that I've used before and I can go back to. What are the words of responsibility? And maybe what we can do here for a minute is just kind of go back and forth and rattle off a bunch of words that we say or that we've heard men say when they're taking responsibility for their own life, their own outcomes, their own situations, not seeing themselves as a victim. What are the words that we need to learn to use in order to take responsibility?
They seem obvious, don't they? That question deserves like a little bit of searching to try to come up with a good vocabulary. Are there guys out there that just don't have those words?
They just don't. They don't have the words. They don't even have the recognition that they're missing that language. I think I've heard people say things like, this one's on me. I don't know. Maybe it was a coach that, I was on a team and we lost a game or whatever, and the coach would say, and the coach is not on the field, but the coach would say, guys, this one's on me.
Yeah.
This was on the planning. This was on the strategy. This one's on me.
This was a failure on my end.
That's super alpha. That's taking back the leadership almost. That's almost kind of saying it's just powerful to acknowledge your role in things. This one's on me. My fault.
I did it.
I did it. You're right. You're right is a powerful one. To just say, you're right. I get what you're saying. I get it.
That's true.
That's language. You're right. This is true. This is true. That did happen. Or
I did do that thing.
I did.
That's my fault. I own it.
I can own that.
Uh-huh. That's a really good one. I can own that.
I can own that. I can take responsibility for that.
Yeah. What you're saying is landing.
Yeah. This is.
That concept of like cognitive dissonance where your brain just can't process. Valerie Dimick, one time I asked her kind of about cognitive dissonance where your brain has to separate like your conscious and your subconscious. Your subconscious, I was asking Valerie one time about somebody who was like smacked upside the head with truth that they were not prepared to receive. She said she's had people black out, pass out, go dark, the lights turn off because they're confronted with something that their subconscious, like their inner being, they know that's true. But the layer where they operate, the public self, the persona self, like that self can't deal. And so like the circuit's just jammed. And she's like, yeah, on one or two occasions, I've had somebody like tilt over and pass out.
Popped a little gasket.
Yes.
Popped a breaker. The breaker broke.
That's exactly right. That's so funny. That's exactly right. Like tilt, like their eyes rolled back, tilt, ding, 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 and they just went to sleep. I remember once upon a time when I was a total piece of garbage person, my wife or other people confronting me with things that my subconscious had to accept and knew was true, but my operational system, this image that I'm projecting, that person did not want to face that. And I remember my sort of MO would be to just have this deer in the headlights look, just this like a blank stare. And I've seen that. I've seen so many people do that, and I completely get it. I completely understand. It's where you're confronted with the reality that you are unwilling. I am unwilling to accept it. It's true, and I know it's true, but my persona is not going to let that be true. I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to say. I'm not going to acknowledge. I continue to deflect and hide out of fear, and deer in the headlights. Have you ever seen that look?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're sparking, like you touch the ends of the jumper cables together. It's just shorten out.
So when you see somebody sitting in a chair, like you probably have this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking to somebody and you're just sort of like presenting to them like, this is it. This is the reality of a situation. And they're just like, they're void. Their eyes just like nothing registers.
I love how you're validating this because I think it's such a common thing. Even then, there may be a way to respond to that. Like, I need a minute. I want to consider what you're saying. this is shocking to my system here.
Okay.
Let me consider this for a minute. Let me write it down.
Let me process this.
Process this. I want to see where you're coming from. I'm feeling a little defensive about it right now, but I want to get there. Let me ponder this a little bit and see if I can understand more about your perspective.
Genius. That's super powerful. I was not equipped. Once upon a time, I was not equipped. I just went deer in the headlights, and then I probably gaslit, and then probably tried to dance, and probably what I did was like overpower with like dominance, maybe like raised voice or whatever. But that's all just me, my ego not allowing reality to be there. So those are really good. That's really good coaching.
I really like what you just said there about I wasn't skilled. I didn't have the capability to do that once upon a time. How did he get there, you guys? He opened himself up to a tribe. He opened himself up to professionals. He opened himself up to the people in his life that he loves, and he learned to listen. That is all. Those are just such good examples. I love that. I love how you talk about the way that you've grown. I didn't know how to do that at one point. And now I've learned some things. I've got tools. You talk about tools a lot. So language, yeah, you might need some help with some language. We've shared a few thoughts there about some of those. I'm trying to think if there are others.
And it's okay to like admit defeat. Like you're listening to this and it's okay to just say like, I suck at that. I don't do any of those things. I don't know how to do those things. I don't operate at that level. Okay, cool. Like fine. Just own it. Just say whatever. And figure out ways that you can, I think you've talked about this many times, see a shrink, talk to your tribe, figure something out, have a beer with your buddies, and then ask them what they do when somebody's like in your face with something that they don't really want to, like have a pizza and a beer and like talk to other dudes about this, specifically dudes, who are going to give good advice and who have good wisdom to share.
Right.
Okay, so if you've got asshole friends and you go and ask from the asshole perspective, you want revalidation of you being a dick, like, okay, that's a bad move. You need to like level up. And maybe this is exposing the reality that you don't have many friends who have leveled up. I'm sure you do, but maybe this is a good way to realize I need to like, sometimes you go down these rabbit holes and they expose so much that's just not good in your life. But where are you going to start?
Yeah, most of the times in my life when I've been the most irresponsible and when I saw myself as a victim or when I was being the villain, all of those had to do with me doing it alone. No one had any idea about the choices I was making. No one had any idea. I wouldn't dare let anyone know how I handled certain circumstances. And so great point again about you got to have some capable men around you who can guide you. You need to be asking for that. You need to go intentionally seeking it and get connected that way. So one of the things under responsibility is that he's reliable. He follows through. He keeps his promises. You've heard about the kind of the cliche thing where the parents are divorced and the dad is supposed to pick up the kid. And the kid's sitting by the window on a Friday. He's just waiting for dad to come and pick him up. And that just never happens. If there's any just disgusting habit that men have, it's not following through, in my mind, especially when it comes to your loved ones, especially if you've promised something, especially if this has to do with, your children, but even on your job, even in things with, friends or neighbors or whatever that you may be involved with, to be reliable, that's pretty alpha. Just doing what you agreed to do. What about reliability?
Those are all good. I also think that it's important when you're not reliable. Again, maybe we circle back and we kind of like hit some of these previous things. There are times where I know I'm not reliable, and I probably do this badly, but I hope that I own it, that I accept that I've screwed up, and then try to figure out how to make an amend or to sort it right. So integrity comes into here. It's important to be reliable. It's important to cultivate that, but it's also important then to accept when you're not, and then to do what can be done to repair that and to fix that. as best as possible. I think you cannot be an adult man and not know the concept of reliability. I think this one needs no explaining, right?
I agree with you. Again, I like what you're saying about when you've fallen through, when you haven't been reliable. There's language on that. I dropped the ball on this one. This one's on me. You didn't deserve that. I could have done better.
Another thing that I was kind of thinking about with these words, you're teaching these very solid vocabulary points. Here's something else. It doesn't count when your apology is from a place of victimhood. Have you ever heard an apology?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I'm such a loser. I don't know why you were so mad. I guess it's my fault. I'm just a loser.
I'm just the worst husband in the world.
Totally. I'm trying to channel it's so pathetic. It's so pathetic.
I never do anything right.
Totally. You hear that? You must hear that, right?
I've said that before.
Oh,
I never do anything right,
I can never measure up to you. I can never do
it's
anything
always
right.
my fault.
That is not accepting responsibility. There's nothing alpha about that. I'm sorry I'm digging at you for your past past moments, but
I deserve it.
Dude, there was nothing attractive or interesting or alpha about any of that. Those apologies are worthless. Right. They're worthless. In fact, they do you more harm than good. Just be quiet. Shut your mouth. And I've done them too. So when that's happening, there is no yardage gained. There is no traction happening. That's dead air. Please stop that. If you're that guy, figure that out and please stop doing that. The people in your life are going to be grateful for it.
So much of your power as a man really comes from whether or not you command respect. And that's one of those things where that just completely saps any respect. That drains any respect that you may have. It makes it all, you're just clicking down a few notches. Your respect has just gone out the window when you're making yourself a victim in your apology. So in being responsible, part of that is that you're maybe serving other people, you're helping other people. In some ways, you're a rescuer of those who may need that because you have a duty. You're a strong man and you can help others and lift others, but you have to be careful about that and have boundaries. So in being responsible, you know who to let in and who to leave out. Some people you let into your conversation. Some people you let into the details of your life, and others you don't. You have to know really what that is, and that's important when it comes to responsibility. One of my old bosses used to say, your allies can quickly become your adversaries. Your friend, that I heard this a dozen times in my career, the guy lets his buddy who just got laid off, he's going through a divorce, he lets his buddy crash on the couch, and he's there for 9 months, ends up sleeping with his wife, and no one can maybe predict those things, but without some sense of boundary, you can take responsibility to a level that's unhealthy for you. And so knowing when to say when, knowing how much to help, knowing when not to get entangled or enmeshed with perpetual victims, that's important too. So you're a responsible person. You're out there giving and loving and serving, and you throw a $20 bill at a homeless person, or you invite someone over for a meal, or whatever may be the case. You're helping and serving, but you can take that too far. You can pull yourself down with that sometimes. I remember being at Boy Scout camp and the life-saving merit badge, and they talked about, if someone's drowning, reach out with a stick, throw them a rope. You don't jump in there after them necessarily because they're going to probably pull you down. So you can reach out to someone with a little bit of distance so that you're not drown yourself. And that's important in terms of an alpha being responsible, that you have boundaries, who to let in, who to keep out. What thoughts you have on that, Taco Mike?
I like the analogy of the guy crashing on your couch. Metaphorically, we've probably been in a lot of situations like that, and you got your wife and your kids are like, Dad, get this idiot out of here. Like, this is killing us. The longer you prolong that, then the worse it gets, and then the more disloyal that your family believes you are being towards them. Because ultimately, who are you more responsible to? Who are you more loyal to? Your old college roommate, who, granted, is in a legit hard-up situation. Like, that poor dude, his wife, whatever, he's kicked out of the house. Okay, bummer. That sucks. Now he's bringing his suckfest into your house, and now your house is turned into a suckfest too. And then these people that you owe first position loyalty to, they're now second position because you're basically demonstrating like, no, I like this guy better. I like this guy more. I love this guy more. So how that looks like is to just, lay it down and be like, look, Phil, like I dig you. We're brothers. We'll always be brothers, but we can't do this anymore. Here's $100. I'm going to get you a week of hotels, whatever. Like I'm not going to kick you out on the street, but I think it's going to require you as the alpha to figure out how you transition. And this is just one situation, but we're basically talking about times and areas of life where you've gotten yourself stuck. How do you extricate? How do you get out of these situations? So that's on the backside. If you have good boundaries, maybe this dude never comes into your house to begin with. Maybe this dude lives in a tent in your backyard because you're like, look, man, because maybe you've got a situation where you just kind of understand the temperament of your wife. This has happened before. And so what happens when you let somebody in. You're too lax. You're too gracious. You bend over backwards, and then your wife ends up hating you and him and everything. So maybe the next time that comes along, instead of this guy even hitting your couch, you offer him a couch in the garage, or you offer him a spot in the backyard for a tent, or you just hook him up with a week of hotels. He doesn't even come to your property. So these are just examples of ways that you have set a fence. Like, who doesn't have property that they put a fence around? Who doesn't have a backyard with a fence? Who doesn't have a house with a door that's got a lock on it? Windows that have a lock. Windows that have shades on them. You've got a business and you've got property there. You've got a chain link fence. There's barbed wire on top. You've got cameras. Who doesn't set up all of those precautions to keep numbskulls out? And your buddy Phil's not a numbskull, but maybe your buddy Phil doesn't belong in your house. So you don't abandon him. So boundaries, that could be an Oprah word. Okay, set up good boundaries for yourself. But I'm just talking about it in terms of logistics. The boundaries that a person can have for themselves are, what do you tolerate? And then do you understand the temperament of the people in your life to know what their tolerance is? Because mine, I can tell you this, my tolerance is way lower than my wife's. I would have anybody come and stay with us at any old time. I would give probably almost anything away because maybe I'm a people pleaser. Maybe I don't care. Maybe I just don't have the piece of DNA that sort of has those protections built in. I'm at the extreme end of that. And so I've had people help me understand what better and more secure boundaries are. So why does this fit in responsibility? It fits in there because if you're going to be responsible for yourself and the people in your life, then you have to figure out what you're going to let into the tent. But an alpha realizes he's got to protect. He has to protect. He has to protect himself, his family, his situations. And he does that with figuring out what some of these boundaries are. So I think conceptually that's what it means. That's what it means to me.
I worked at Catholic Charities one time, and I worked in the adoption program, but across the way was the homeless shelter. This was guys would come in at night, and this was for the most destitute, the poorest of the poor, the people in the most hopeless situation, and there were boundaries. They would get a breathalyzer when they came in at night. At 7 a.m, you had to leave. You can't just camp out there all day long. They have to clean up. They got to wash the sheets and everything. That was a good example to me of boundaries. You can give and love and serve and make sacrifices and help people. But if you don't have some rules in place and some framework for restriction, I guess, or where are the limits of this thing, it can quickly get out of hand.
Establish guidelines. So you're bringing up some really, really interesting thought streams there. Like if you've got, let's say you've got a wife or a spouse who's a substance abuser and it's causing great harm. Think about that. Children, people in business, people that you work with. Think about ways that people can do you harm. And then how do you set up a framework of, these are my tolerance. This is all I'm willing to tolerate. These are the base guidelines of this established relationship. And I will not tolerate or accept behavior actions beyond this line. And what is the line and where do you draw it and how does it get negotiated? These are tough conversations to have. There's no right or wrong. There's no absolute. It can't be black and white. You can't just, in my opinion, I don't think you can just say it can't be ever this because, there are some, again, it's just so tough. You would say there just can't be certain sexual grievances. Like there are some things that have 0 tolerance lines, but then others are going to be maybe gray or more fluid or move around, or there's going to be some forgiveness and renegotiation and just sort of like visit it again. These are hard conversations to have.
The ability to say no, and alpha knows how to do that. Sometimes the answer has to be no. Sometimes the answer has to be no, I can't help you. Sometimes the best help is no help. So while we have responsibility, I think some men are out there trying to save the world and trying to do too much, and they drown themselves in the process because they can't say no, or they can't say, here, I'll throw you the buoy and I'll pull you in.
That was really good about the Catholic Charities.
Yeah.
Because I could totally visualize, like, you got to sign a contract probably to get in there. You got to blow.
Right.
If you don't, like, hit some of those bare minimums, like, you're not welcome here.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
We know you have nothing. We know you have no other option, but this is still, there's still a rule. So we did an episode called Wrong Pole, and it's how the alpha responds when he is wrong. That's a big part of responsibility, is that sometimes you're going to be wrong. And I believe that you have to admit when you're wrong and then make amends for that. So some of this, frankly, does in fact come right from the 12-step literature on promptly admitting when you're wrong. There's power in that seems counterintuitive to your ego, to admit when you're wrong. You see these politicians and stuff, and anytime there's any accusation, this is the type of stuff in that book, the 48 Laws of Power, never admit to wrong. Never even give it any credibility. Don't even answer the complaint because you lose your power. That's not actual power. So admitting when you're wrong, making amends, Mike, I know that it's something that you seem to do very well and that you've done a great deal of work in your own life with. Talk about that some, admitting when you're wrong, making amends.
I take guys down to Mexico from time to time, and I do it in a way that I think is beneficial to them and to me specifically, especially anyway. And we go down and we have these experiences, and when I take guys down, there's sort of like different levels of intensity. With anything like sports or motorcycles or anything, you've got guys who are ultimate hardcore, and then guys who just want to have we want to go for a run,
leisurely experience.
Yeah, let's go for like half a mile run, then we'll get lunch. Okay. And then you got guys who are like ultra marathoners.
Right.
Okay. So there's these big broad spectrums, and like that's how it is with anything. So earlier this year in the spring, I took some guys down, and this was just a fun run. This was dudes who were affiliated friends, and there were no sort of expectations on this trip. And I got us into trouble. I got us into a bad situation. The nuts and bolts of it is, here's just kind of a high level view. We went down, and these guys had been down previously the year before, and it was a fun run. It was super chill, great time, emphasis on like beach riding and tacos. Fantastic. It was amazing. Prior to the trip, I sort of probed them a little bit and was like, hey, do you guys want to like click it up a notch? Should we make this a little more extreme? Should we like dig a little deeper? Should we take a bigger bite of the apple? You guys up for that? And then the response was generally yes. So I got a specific route from a guy who was a hardcore guy. So I'm going to right now admit, and I've done this to these guys, I freely and readily admit so many wrongs, so many mistakes. But the long and the short of it is I got a trail from a guy who is hardcore. It should have been a red flag. I missed it. I had plenty of opportunities to load in to the trip other trails that were more in line with their previous experience. Adding this into the mix, it exponentially upped the game. So guys come down with their machines, and it should be my judgment to decide and to observe whether machines are, level 1 or level 10, like how capable is the equipment, how capable are the riders. So overriding my whole thought process, it was like, oh, I want to go see this. The guy that gave me this trail, like he's a cool guy. He goes to cool places. Like this must be really cool. And he kind of sold it as this is like a really wild, adventurous place to go. I had that in my head. I want to go. That's very selfish of me. And so much so that I sort of blew through common sense evaluations of like, who am I with and how are they feeling? And like, what's the energy level of these guys? And I sort of selfishly decided unilaterally, like, I'm going to take us down this area and we're going to go. It ended up going very badly. Ultimately it required, so there were some dudes who just like hit the end of their physical and mental ability to be on that trip. Have you ever been somewhere? You go to Disneyland. You go to Disneyland, and I mean no disrespect. I'm gonna use this analogy, but I mean no disrespect to anyone who is bonked, anyone who has hit the wall. But I just want you to have this visualization because I think it's important. I think it's important to see. Not all of us have been around people who have had high level implosions. That's a thing. You've been in sports, you've been in football, you played college football. You know what it's like to be on the field or to be on the practice court and to have somebody completely come apart.
Melt down.
But right? You've seen that. Okay? Not all of us have. So the analogy looks like you're in Disneyland and it's the morning and everybody's having a great time. Everybody's faces are clean, the kids are clean, the clothes are clean. Midday, it begins to sort of get unraveled. The kids are not looking so sharp. They got food stains and sunburn, and the mom's hair was once fluffy. Now it's sort of like hanging down, and the dad's, right? His shoulders are kind of dragging, and by like 3, 4 o'clock, right? You see it. By like 4 p.m., the kids, a show. Everywhere you look, like every little family group, kids are laying on the ground. They're screaming. They're like, the mom's dress is like half pulled off because the kid's like yanking on her skirt. The dad's just like, F this. Why the hell did we come here? And he just wants to like murder suicide the whole thing. Like it goes bad. Sometimes in life, there are these situations where the pressure ramps up, the situation escalates, difficulties and challenges escalate. And then like there's this exponential vector of how badly it goes and how quickly. The X and Y axis, they sort of arc up, and then all of a sudden it just goes straight vertical. It goes from like this 30-degree up to just 90 degrees straight up vertical. That's like 4 p.m. at Disneyland. So we're in Mexico and it becomes increasingly more and more challenging. We end up not able to get to the destination on day one, and we have to camp in a little rancher's hut, which was amazing and beautiful and fantastic and a blessing. And we camped in this little rancher's hut because it was too difficult to get out. Day 2, we cannot get out the second day. We have to go back. We have to retreat back to the rancher's hut. So we're there the second day. There were some high-level implosions, the Disneyland moment, that happened at a very high level, which is my fault. I accept and own full responsibility that I put these dudes in a situation. When the implosion happened, and it did, I put them there. I put them in a situation and in a state that pressured them beyond their ability in that moment to continue to endure. But that's my fault. So it would be gaslighting. This is an example of gaslighting. If I then said, oh, these guys suck, they couldn't hang.
These pussies couldn't handle it.
They couldn't do it. They couldn't endure. They just bonked out. They hit the wall, whatever. That's gaslighting. That's me deflecting ownership and responsibility and saying, yeah, it sucked. And these guys wanted to tap out. But it's their fault. No, it wasn't their fault. It's my fault. I put them there. I did everything that got us to those points where those, Disneyland moments happen, those implosions happen. I put them there. So to me, admitting wrongs is difficult. It does not do my pride any, it does not. It is hard for me to own and accept. It does not do my pride any good. And it may not do my business. It doesn't do my reputation. It doesn't do me any good to own and accept where I have screwed up, sometimes at very high levels. But it is essential and critical to me and my mental sanity to do that. As painful as it is for me to say, even own and admit something like that, it's more painful to my psyche because of who I've been as a person and the journey in life that I've traveled and the ways that I've really blown up and ruined my life in significant ways. It's more destructive for me emotionally to pretend it didn't happen, to gaslight, to try to deflect, that causes me more pain than the pain of just being like, shit, I did it. Your vocabulary that you talked about earlier, owning it. I did this. It's my fault. It's not their fault. Nothing that happened on that trip is their fault. It's all my fault. And how that story ended was some guys got on sat phones and blessed for that and called a dude's dad who had a freaking helicopter. And that dude flew down. He flew from, I think, Phoenix, swooped in, got us out of there. It was amazing. It was incredible. Every part of that experience was incredible. And to me was a growth experience. And then afterwards, I sat down and I decided that I was going to, any money spent that any of these dudes had spent in, I returned it, refunded it back out, paid huge amounts of money to have motorcycles taken out, settling up with the helicopter dude. Just, I bled a ton of money to repair and amend and correct as best as I could that situation. I sat down and wrote an excruciating letter to these guys, just sort of like cutting open guts and be like, look, guys, I let you down. I messed up. Point by point, like, here's a moment where the outcome could have been different. I could have made a different choice. Like, click, 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 just go down and then send it out to these guys at great personal cost. Like, you know what, again, and now I'm kind of like thinking about ways to protect my ego. Again, I want to do that. My default is to self-preservation and protection. Right. But that's not who I want to be as a person. I want to be the kind of person who's just as transparent as I can and own it and accept it. So the point of your really great Red 9 topic here of what is the importance of admitting wrong and making amends, I go to sleep with a clear and full conscience after this really shitty, terrible situation. And I am open. If any of the guys who are on this trip or associated with this trip feel otherwise, I ask to reach out to me because I would like to continue to make sure to correct where I can and have power to those situations in my life that ended up harming and creating harm, because I seek not to create harm. Up here, you had even said that in one of your I don't want to be a villain. I don't want to blame. I don't want to harm. I don't want to be a villain. I don't want to be a victim either. Like, I'm not a victim of any of that. It costs a ton of money. Boo-hoo. Like, so what? It's my fault. In my opinion, I think an alpha owns and accepts at personal cost and personal expense, any cost and any expense, to repair and amend as best as he can, and then accept the pain, the bullets, whatever he incurs by that ownership. It's his fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. So I own it. I take it. I accept it. What would my life look like if I didn't care what other people thought or said about me? That's sort of like this constant thought that just reoccurs in my head many, many, many times. What does my life look like if I just don't care what people say? To me, that is true freedom. Like, you talk about freedom. If anybody ever uses the word freedom, to me, what the word freedom looks like and feels like is I don't care what I'm thought of. It's irrelevant to me what anybody's thoughts or opinions are about me. So if this situation creates some sort of like negative, I'm over ego, I guess. I'm truly not, but the ideal is I would like to be past and beyond ego. So it doesn't matter what people say.
So I wonder if some of these guys, I don't know if these were people you already knew or were they new to you. I bet some of those respect you a great deal for the way you handled that. Stephen Covey talked about he had a contractor one time who really messed up something major on a project, cost him, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe. And he said that because the man owned it and corrected it, he used him in every project ever since from that point forward, because he took responsibility for it and he made it right. And I don't know, I just wonder if the way you handled that actually made guys, I bet you got some friends out of that, more than enemies. I hope that that's the case anyway, where they see where this was maybe avoidable, but you took responsibility and made it right the best you could, including returning their money and so forth. Sometimes our mistakes, the way we handle our mistakes, it really makes a difference in how people see us. The guy who's defensive, the person who's skirting the responsibility for it, that's a person who's despised and hated. But when you can take ownership and really be responsible and do the right thing, I just think you gain a lot more respect that way. And I'm sure some of these guys come out of that with more respect for you than you know, because of how you handled it, how you admitted it, and how you took ownership, made it right.
There is this great concept in Christianity that talks about the Christianity, I believe anyway, that talks about how, the concept of Jesus, and you don't have to believe in Jesus to believe in this concept. It is that everyone is redeemable, everyone can be redeemed, and every situation can be redeemed. It doesn't matter how bad, how terrible, how awful. It doesn't matter how the harm was and how deep. The concept and the power of redemption and resurrection and forgiveness is so complete and so thorough that it is capable of redeeming anything. I choose to live with that mindset. I choose to live through the concept of it being projected through Jesus. But again, you don't have to believe in that Jesus story to accept the hopefulness of that concept. And there's plenty of religions and ideals that sort of are foundationally based around that. I would strongly suggest finding a faith tradition or developing, create your own. Who's to say that my made-up religion is any different, better, or more wacky than your made-up religion? It doesn't matter. Who cares? But what is very, very redeeming on a soul level is to have a concept and to have a relationship with the power that looks like that, so that you can look at yourself in the mirror, make amends, go to sleep, and sleep well, knowing that these misdeeds, that this concept of ultimate forgiveness, that it will work out, that it will be fine, that in the end, somehow, it will all be just fine. And I don't have to fret. I don't have to obsess. I don't have to go around and do damage. One of the thoughts that I had initially was like, I started getting phone calls because the population of people that go to Mexico kind of on these levels is pretty small, and we all kind of know each other. Dude, I got like a couple of calls from people who are like, dude, tell me the story. Like, it's getting out. Like, everybody knows what happened. And ego self-preservation is like, dude, I need to like try to figure out who's knowing and damage control and maybe make some phone calls and try to explain. And then I just scratched me like, no, it doesn't matter. It's just fine. It's fine. The more I try to get in there and do that, if my position really is just make amends and leave it alone, then me trying to like go in and damage control will invalidate that.
Interesting.
So I didn't. I left it alone. And I've had a couple of those phone calls. And at the end of it, one of them in particular, the guy was like, dude, been there, done that. I've had the same thing happen. It wasn't quite as, my story didn't quite go your way, but like, been there, done that. So I've had some good validation of people sort of using the story of my crash and burn here in this instance to say like, yeah, I've done that too. I think when we own our complete and catastrophic failures, I think it's a superpower. I really think that it's very healing for me. Like, the only way I can sleep at night is to do it like this. But I think it also is a superpower, and it's energizing for people who know they should live like that, but aren't. But they hear a story like this and they're like, why can't I do that in my own life, in my own circumstances?
I heard something recently. I think it was actually Jimmy Durbin who was talking about this too, who's saying that so much of our pain comes when our heart is closed. And in this case, I think when our heart is closed to our own failures and our own weaknesses and our own vulnerabilities and our own problems and the things that we've created, that hurts. That hurts more than the pain of acknowledging it. If we can just be honest and tell the truth and come clean and admit when we're wrong and just kind of be humble about that, it seems to work out. There's freedom in it. It sounds like that's what you found is some freedom. You found some freedom by doing the right thing. It's cost you a lot of money. It cost you some worry. Of course, you don't want to upset these guys who are your friends, but you have some freedom from this now, it seems like.
I agree. And it can cause you friendships too. I mean, the reality is I haven't really spoken with these dudes since, and they may never want to have anything to do with me again. And you have to be okay with that. Like, I can't go in and damage control. And these are hard things to live with. I may have screwed a relationship that's dead and done and buried. These are all hard things to accept and to deal with. I believe this is what we do as alphas, is we endeavor to continually do the next right thing at whatever personal cost is incurred. The personal cost is irrelevant. Who cares how much money? Who cares how much time? Like, so what? There are just things in life that are just going to cut you, and you're going to bleed some. You're just going to bleed out. It's just going to happen. And let it, bleed it, put the tourniquet on it, and start the healing. But there's going to be blood on the ground. It's just going to happen. You can't pretend it didn't happen. You can't look away. Sometimes you just have to look at the blood on the ground and be like, that's mine. I did that. Where do we go from here?
I'm curious, Mike, about did you have people that influenced your choices on that? Did you open up to the situation to trusted friends or loved ones or whatever to kind of say, hey, this is what's happened. What should I do? I mean, did you just intuitively know? You've done a lot of work. You know how to approach these things already as a very mature man, but did you have others helping you make the decision about the next right thing? Sometimes we don't know what that is. Did you get some opinions?
Yes, I did. And I hope that this doesn't sound like pat me on the back. I do not want this to be a hero moment for me, because I'm not the hero here. The hero is the dude in the helicopter who came and got us. The hero are the dudes who, sucked it up and endured and like had great attitudes. And in spite of the terrible situation that I had gotten us into, the heroes of this story are those dudes who like chinned up and nutted up and manned up and just kept on keeping on. Those guys are the heroes. I'm the villain here. So I just want to say that. I just want to verbalize that. But to your question, yes. So I have a handful of dudes that I keep in my back pocket who are sounding boards. One of them I think you'll have in soon, Justin Mackey. I got a hold of him, and a couple other dudes, and I just say like, look, high level, here's what went down. Like, this is my thinking on the matter. Can you help, influence and correct and guide as this, gets navigated? Another solid buddy, Ben Bakke, who was with me on this whole trip, solid dude. He was my right-hand man. Great sounding board, great wisdom, great insight. So I think it's imperative and essential that as a guy just levels up and alphas up and just continues to like grow in his own life, that can't happen unless you are bulwarked and buttressed and surrounded by dudes who always have their back, but then I think are just you look up to, like they're better skilled and better equipped than you. And hopefully you can be that to somebody and somebody can be that to you.
So that's being a man. That is an unfortunate situation, it sounded like, but you did the right thing. Great example. Another reason why I trust you with the things that I share with you about my life and why I lean on you the way I do and why I want you to be a part of this whole movement here. So thanks for sharing that, man. The last thing here is about accepting things that we can't change and changing the unacceptable things that we can. Again, another 12-step thing kind of from the Serenity Prayer. Talk about acceptance, recognizing the difference between what we can change and not change. So much of what happens in life, we really do have options. There really are things that we can do about that. Knowing which is which, that's what takes wisdom.
Aren't there a lot of guys who are confused about accepting and settling? Because I think one of the things that confuses dudes is the fine line between accepting shitty situations that you're in, that you've caused or you're in, and just laying down and letting it wash over you and just then being a mat and saying, oh, well, this is my life. What can I do? That acceptance is not the same use of the same word when we talk about accepting things you can't change, changing unacceptable things you can. The way you have worded it, you're the wordsmith. The way you've worded it here helps illustrate and illuminate the difference between laying down and letting your circumstances, you're just a floor mat to your circumstances, versus accepting the reality that you are where you are. This is just my life. And then I'm going to set about and task myself with changing the unacceptable things as I can. How did you phrased that? That's your writing. How did you come to that?
Some things we have to accept, and just literally back to the language again, we have to just say, this is my reality and I accept it. And maybe there's nothing that can be done about it. But so many things that are unacceptable, like, I don't know, my weight, my health, my financial situation, my relationships, whatever's going on in your life, there are some things that aren't okay with you, but you have the ability, you got some power, you have the option to do something about it. And so I think that's what I'm saying. It's just that some things we really just have to let go of, and other things we've got to zip up, put our damn boots on, and get with it.
Intellectually, this is tough to do. It's this concept of being a realist and saying, like, this is my situation and it sucks, but not being willing to then just arrest and stay there. So it's this interesting dynamic. It's this conceptual dynamic of, this is my life. This is who I am. This is the body I'm in, or this is the money that I have in the bank. Like, here it is. Stopping with the denial, with the pretending, with the blaming, like accepting at that level. That's what we're talking about. Just slow your roll for a second and be like, this is where we're at. This is who you are. And then that's not stopping. That's just acknowledging, so that you can, like, again, slow your roll, like just calm down for a second and just be like, okay, it sucks. This is where you are. And then once you've sort of like acknowledged that, then, okay, what do we do now? Calmly, with like great forethought, care, and reason, how do we go past this point? How do we move past this? Because previous to acceptance is denial. Like, what are some of the words to describe that?
Yeah, denial, defensiveness. I mean, there's so many of those. Blaming others, deflection,
anger about it, panic about it, anxiety, all that. I've seen good success with that for me, and then with other people. Once you just get to that point of acceptance, then you just turn off the volume and the clatter of anger and denial. You just sort of like, that just needs to go away. Like, you just need to stop with that. Does that make sense? Is that what happens?
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, you can't really think it through to the next right thing if you're not acknowledging the truth of your situation. In one of our episodes, we talked about the little phrase alpha up, and you kind of coined that. And what does that mean? And you said it's accepting where you are, but that you can choose your way forward, something along those lines. You accept the sucky situation that you're in, but that you don't have to stay there. And even if the only actionable thing is a change in your attitude, or a change in your interpretation of the event, a change in how you see yourself or other people, that may be all that you can do. Your only action may be forgiveness. This may not be undoable. This may not be something that you reverse, but it may be about forgiveness. It may be about taking a step. Again, we're talking about amends, I guess. Maybe this is you're making amends with your own self, your value as a person. But sometimes there's action that can be taken that's preventing this thing from happening in the future. Sometimes it's preparing in a different way so that this doesn't recur again.
When I was down there in that valley with those dudes in Mexico, one of the things I was not doing that I am guilty of is not fully accepting like the full weight and severity of our situation. I think it should be noted, and this is, I'm not trying to justify anything, but I think it should be noted that we were in a situation that was dire and bad. We did have shelter, we had food, we had fuel, we didn't have injuries, we had no mechanical situations. So my level of denial, or my inability to accept our situation, I was operating from a standpoint of, I'm a tough guy, I'm a badass, so ego. We're not lost, we have gas, we have food, we got water. Like, my sense of like unwillingness to accept was that, to me, these are all wins in our column. Yeah, we have a few negatives. We're tired, we're discouraged. those are definite negatives. But I'm looking at it from a standpoint of like, I got more money in the bank than I got more credits than debits. So we're good. The reality is no, we're not good. There are dudes who are not seeing it from my perspective. And so my inability to see the lay of the land created a situation where I wasn't accepting the reality of the situation. And I was continually making it worse. So acceptance often, and I say this and I sound like it's as if I'm doing these things. I'm not doing these things. So many of these things, please write in. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, you can pin me where I'm a hypocrite on most of this. Almost all of this, I'm an absolute bold-faced, outright hypocrite because I'm not doing most of the things I've talked about, most of the things, these ideals that we're describing here, I'm not doing a ton of these. And I get them wrong and screw them up more often than I get them right. Does not invalidate the fact that I want to, and I try to, and I endeavor to. So to me, accepting and settling are two very, very different things. What acceptance would have looked like then was to just stop trying. Guys, just one more hill. Like, look, we're almost there, Like, that's my mindset. My mindset's like, I got gas. Keep pushing. Like, let's just keep going, guys. There's a little bit more daylight. Like, we could just get over this hill and I bet you will be able to see. Like, at some point, I just needed to, like, stop and just accept. And I just didn't have the ability to do that because I was just too stupidly optimistic or ego or whatever. But the reality is I needed to just sit down. Sometimes just, wave a flag and just be like, it's done. And let maybe somebody else. And what ended up happening is my good buddy Nick, my brother Nick, who was on the trip, he stepped in with the next cooler head. Like of the hierarchy of cool heads, it should have been me that had the coolest head. Makes sense, word picture. Mm-hmm. But I didn't because I was delusional. I hadn't accepted the reality of the moment. Thankfully, the next coolest head, Nikki, stepped up and was like, okay, I'm going to take over. I had to then, now here was a moment, I had to check my ego because my ego was like, no, I'm the leader. I'm the guy. You can't, like,
this is my trip.
This is my trip. Like, you can't now call the shots. I have to call the shots. I had to, no joke, I had to walk around where no one could see me. And I freaking like kicked the ground. I like punched the air because I had to just work out the energy of like, no, I got to lay down. I got to give it up. Like I'm defeated. This moment has defeated me. I have no more tools like I'm done. I got to call it. I got to wave the flag. And I did. I went around the corner, did that, came back. And then I basically like, in essence, I don't know that I said this, but in essence, my mindset was like, Nick, from here on, it's your trip. Like you have proven leadership. You've demonstrated, like you got a hold of a guy with a helicopter. Like I couldn't do that. You now are running the program. And I respect that and defer to you and will acquiesce to decisions and shots that you think are best and most prudent to the situation. And my ego was just screaming, just on fire, like this can't happen. And there were plenty of even moments where like my brain is just like, pull it back. No, like retract. Again, I did not say that verbally. I don't remember that. And now Nick may correct me, and maybe I did, but I don't remember that. But this was my mindset of like, you got the controls, Nick, like it's yours.
That seems like the most alpha thing of the whole story, what you're saying right now, to kind of hand over the reins and to acknowledge I'm past the point of no return in a way because I'm stuck in self or whatever it is. Like that's the heroic moment to me. When you released it, that's when you really gained control, is when you relinquished it to someone else. That paradox of control, it's something that keeps coming up. I love that you did that, man. That's, to me, because you're saying he's less invested with his ego. He comes in there, and great ending to that gave him the authority, I guess, that you wanted to retain for yourself. That's powerful. That was a responsible thing for you to do.
I had to do it because he showed leader. Like the dude stepped up. Was making things happen where I was failing to make things happen. And forever and ever, that moment, like I have this great captured photograph in my brain of like Nick kind of standing on a knoll. Like this is like very sort of emblematic of the moment. He's on a little rock over us. We're down here. He's up there. And the sun, I'm trying to paint this word picture of like the sun is behind him. The light is behind him. And it's sort of like shining through him. And I just felt like I need to just stand down. Like Nick's got this. He's in charge now. And that, again, my ego is like, I don't want to do this. This can't be happening, but it had to happen. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is very essential for the alpha to sometimes wave a flag and be like, I'm not alpha right now. Like, I can't do it. I'm too exhausted. I'm too whatever. And to hand it over to somebody who then becomes the alpha. And at different points, one of my favorite phrases, Lee Iacocca, he used to say, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And in that moment, I could no longer lead. And so I needed to get out of the way and then follow. And we got out of there. And that experience is going to inform me and teach me and carry me forever. Like, there will no doubt be moments of leadership in the future that will look and feel just like that. And I will tap into that. And so the time and money that experience cost is more valuable than any seminar I could have spent money. You know, think about money you spend on going to a trade show or you take a class or whatever. That's what I did. I took a class. I paid some money. I took a class. Whatever. Big deal.
Man, I love that as the final point here, I guess, of this whole thing about responsibility. Recognizing your limitations, owning it, handing it over sometimes, doing the next right thing. This has been awesome, Mike. Good to have you back, brother. We're already talking about some other shows that we've got planned. We appreciate you being with us. Until next time, no excuses. Alpha up.
Boom.
How about that?
Boom.
Gentlemen, you are the alpha, and this is the Alpha Quorum.